Michael Saylor. 3 moves to make before hyperinflation hits America. Wall Street thought he was insane when Michael Saylor bet his entire company on Bitcoin, but what he saw coming made that decision look conservative. I'm sitting across from Michael Saylor in his Washington, D.C. office, and the tension in his voice is unmistakable. Behind him, charts show the U.S. money supply exploding by 40% in just 2 years. He leans forward, his eyes fixed on mine. People think inflation is bad, he says, pausing deliberately. They have no idea what's coming. Saylor has been studying monetary systems for decades. As the CEO of MicroStrategy, he's watched his company's treasury grow from $500 million to over $5 billion through strategic Bitcoin purchases. But today, he's not talking about past wins. He's talking about survival. In 2020, when the Federal Reserve printed $3 trillion in a matter of months, I knew we had crossed a line, Saylor recalls, his voice dropping almost a whisper. That wasn't monetary policy anymore. That was monetary suicide. The numbers are staggering. Since 2008, the U.S. money supply has increased by over 300%. Government debt has exploded to $33 trillion. And now, with Social Security and Medicare liabilities, we're looking at unfunded obligations exceeding $200 trillion. But what's truly striking is what Saylor discovered when he modeled different inflation scenarios for his board. I ran the numbers assuming 15% annual inflation, he says, pulling out a Warren chart. Do you know what happens to a dollar's purchasing power in just 5 years at that rate? The answer stops conversations cold. A dollar becomes worth 50 cents. This isn't theory, Saylor continues, his intensity building. Argentina went through this. Venezuela lived it. Germany experienced it. And every time, the same pattern emerges. People who hold cash get destroyed. People who hold assets survive. You haven't seen Michael Saylor's biggest warning yet. He stands up, walking to a window overlooking the Federal Reserve building in the distance. The irony isn't lost on either of us. In 1971, when Nixon closed the gold window, he promised it would be temporary. Saylor says his back still turned. 53 years later, we're still living with that temporary decision, and now the bill is coming due. The statistics he shares next are jarring. Since 1971, the dollar has lost 96% of its purchasing power against gold. Real wages, adjusted for true inflation, have stagnated for decades. Meanwhile, asset prices have exploded. The Fed can't stop printing now, Saylor explains, returning to his seat. They're trapped. Stop printing, and the government can't fund itself. Keep printing, and the currency dies. It's a mathematical certainty. This is exactly where the picture changed for Saylor's own strategy. In August 2020, MicroStrategy made history by becoming the first public company to hold Bitcoin as its primary treasury reserve asset. The decision shocked Wall Street. Board members questioned his sanity. Competitors called it reckless. That weekend, I couldn't sleep, Saylor admits, a rare moment of vulnerability crossing his face. I was betting everything on my understanding of monetary physics. If I was wrong, I'd lose my company. If I was right, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. But what's truly striking is the depth of research that preceded that decision. Saylor had spent months studying every major currency collapse in history: the Weimar Republic, Zimbabwe, Argentina, Venezuela, Turkey. The patterns were identical. Governments always promise they'll be responsible with money printing, he says, his voice gaining edge. They always claim it's temporary. They always say they have it under control, and they're always wrong. The chart he shows me next is devastating. It tracks the purchasing power of major currencies over the past century. Every single fiat currency shows the same trajectory, down. Hard to believe, but the average lifespan of a fiat currency is 27 years, Saylor states. The dollar has been a pure fiat currency for 53 years. We're living on borrowed time. Everything so far was just the beginning of Saylor's analysis. Move number 1, convert cash to hard assets immediately. The first move is the most urgent, Saylor says, his voice taking on a commanding tone. You must get out of dollars. Every day you hold cash, you're being silently robbed. He explains the mathematics with brutal clarity. If inflation hits 20% annually, a conservative estimate given current monetary policy, $100,000 in cash becomes $40,960 in real purchasing power after just 5 years. But here's what people don't understand about hyperinflation, Saylor continues, leaning forward. It doesn't happen gradually. It accelerates exponentially. He pulls up velocity of money charts, showing how quickly currencies can collapse once confidence breaks. In Weimar, Germany, prices doubled every 3 days at the peak. People literally needed wheelbarrows full of cash to buy bread. The phone rings suddenly, interrupting us. Saylor glances at the caller ID, and his expression shifts. "I need to take this," he says, stepping into an adjoining room. Through the glass, I can see him speaking intensely, gesturing at charts on his phone. When he returns 5 minutes later, his face is grim. "That was our treasury team," he explains. "The Fed just announced another quantitative easing program. $500 billion. They're not even pretending anymore. This is why move number 1 is so critical," he emphasizes. Bitcoin, real estate, stocks, commodities, precious metals. Anything real, anything scarce. Because when hyperinflation hits, scarcity becomes the most valuable characteristic in the universe. Wait a second. Don't miss this detail about timing. People think they have years to prepare, Saylor warns. They think inflation will stay at 3%, maybe 5%. They're catastrophically wrong. When confidence in a currency breaks, the collapse happens in months, not years. He shows me a timeline of the Turkish lira's collapse in 2021. In just 6 months, it lost 50% of its value against the dollar. Now imagine the happening to the dollar against Bitcoin, against gold, against real assets. The mathematics are terrifying. A 50% currency devaluation means your purchasing power gets cut in half overnight. Move number 2, leverage the Cantillon Effect. The second move requires understanding something most people have never heard of, Saylor explains, pulling out a dog-eared economics textbook. The Cantillon Effect. It explains why some people get rich during inflation while others get destroyed. He flips to a highlighted passage. Richard Cantillon observed that when new money enters the economy, it doesn't affect everyone equally. The people closest to the money printer benefit first. Everyone else pays the price. The implications are staggering. When the Fed creates new money, it flows first to banks, then to large corporations, then to government contractors, then to employees, and finally, if at all, to regular citizens. By the time inflation reaches your grocery bill, the asset holders have already captured the wealth, Saylor explains. Real estate prices surge. Stock prices explode. Bitcoin pumps. But your salary? That adjusts last, if ever. You haven't seen Michael Saylor's most controversial strategy yet. This is why owning assets becomes survival strategy, he continues. You position yourself early in the Cantillon chain. You become the asset holder, not the cash holder. Saylor's own experience proves this point. MicroStrategy's Bitcoin holdings have gained billions in dollar terms, but more importantly, they've gained purchasing power while the dollar has weakened. In 2020, our average Bitcoin purchase price was around $27,000, he recalls. Today, that same Bitcoin buys significantly more goods and services than $27,000 in cash would. That's the Cantillon Effect in action. But there was one detail Saylor hadn't anticipated. "I thought Bitcoin's price appreciation would be the main benefit," he admits. But it turns out the real benefit is the protection against purchasing power destruction. When your treasury is in Bitcoin, you're insulated from monetary debasement. The numbers support his analysis. Over the past 4 years, while the dollar has lost approximately 20% of its purchasing power, Bitcoin has gained over 400% against the consumer price index. Everything so far was preparation for Saylor's final move. Move number 3, position for the Great Reset. The third move is the most important, Saylor says, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Because this isn't just about inflation. This is about a complete reorganization of the global monetary system. He pulls out a chart showing central bank digital currency development worldwide. Over 100 countries are actively developing CBDCs. China has already launched theirs. The European Union is close behind. When the current system collapses, Saylor explains, they're not going to admit failure. They're going to blame speculators, blame Russia, blame climate change. And they're going to offer a solution: complete monetary control. The implications chill the room. CBDCs would give governments unprecedented control over spending, saving, and financial privacy. Every transaction monitored, every purchase approved or denied. This is when the truth hit me. Saylor continues, his intensity building. Bitcoin isn't just an investment. It's the only escape hatch from complete financial surveillance. Hard to believe, but Saylor predicts a transition will happen within the next 3 years. They'll sell it as modernization, he explains. They'll promise convenience, security, efficiency. What they won't mention is that with CBDCs, they can freeze your account, expire your money, or limit your spending with a keystroke. When the document appeared on his screen that morning, showing Federal Reserve research into CBDC implementation, Saylor knew the timeline had accelerated. The research paper was titled Digital Dollar Design Choices, he recalls. It wasn't asking whether they should implement a CBDC. It was asking how quickly they could roll it out. But what's truly striking is Saylor's solution to this looming control system. Bitcoin is mathematically scarce, he explains. No government can print more of it. No central bank can debase it. No politician can confiscate it if you hold the private keys properly. He shows me statistics that support his thesis. Bitcoin's adoption rate is now faster than internet adoption in the 1990s. El Salvador has made it legal tender. Major corporations are adding it to their balance sheets. The choice is becoming clear, Saylor states with absolute conviction. Financial sovereignty or financial slavery? Bitcoin or CBDCs? Freedom or control? Wait a second. Don't miss this crucial timing detail. The window for preparation is closing, Saylor warns, checking his watch. Once hyperinflation becomes obvious to everyone, once the CBDC rollout begins, once the Great Reset starts, it'll be too late for most people. He stands up, walking back to the window. In the distance, the Federal Reserve building looms against the darkening sky. When he turned back to face me, the determination in his eyes was unmistakable. I've spent 4 years positioning MicroStrategy for what's coming, he says. Now it's time for everyone else to make their choice. The numbers support his urgency. Government spending shows no signs of slowing. Debt service costs are consuming an ever larger portion of the federal budget, and monetary policy remains trapped in an endless cycle of money printing. People keep asking me if it's too late to buy Bitcoin, Saylor reflects. But they're asking the wrong question. The real question is it too late to preserve your wealth before the greatest monetary transition in human history? Everyone thought they understood Michael Saylor's Bitcoin strategy, but the real story was never about getting rich. It was about surviving the collapse of the dollar system and emerging financially free on the other side. The choice, as he puts it, is simple: adapt or get left behind. But the clock is